Good morning, Husker fans. Welcome back to the Husker Big Red YouTube channel. I'm Chris Peterson, and joining me as always is Danny Gillette. We're back here for another episode of the podcast, and we're going to break down the first week of Nebraska football spring ball and offer up some of our takeaways. We're going to look ahead as well to the Crown tonight. We finally have the college basketball Crown. Nebraska plays tonight against Arizona State, so we'll break that down. We'll also talk about the latest happenings on the recruiting trail and the transfer portal. We'll get into the rumblings there. So before we get into it, please make sure that you guys hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, get into the comment section. And Danny, how are you on this Monday morning?
I'm doing well. It's almost into April, so baseball season started, and a lot of news for Nebraska too in terms of sports. So I'm doing well.
Yeah, good weekend. The baseball team took 2 out of 3 from number 5 Oregon State, so that was good to see them kind of get off the mat, and maybe that will springboard them into Big Ten play and kind of turning this season around. So it was good to see the
Yeah,
Huskers have a
sure.
good weekend there. Softball still cruising along, winning 6 in a row. So, but the biggest story, I guess, right now in the world of Nebraska athletics, I was going to say the Crown. I don't think that's it though. It's spring ball. I think that's where everybody is really focused. Not that there's not a lot of interest in the Crown, and we will get to that here in a second. But everybody, I think there's a lot more in spring football because I know that some people don't really care about the Crown. There's kind of
I
mixed
know
feelings
there is
about
here. I'll say that.
it. Whereas I'm all in on the Crown. I think it's a fun field. You know, you've got a lot of really quality teams in there. Like I have said previously, there's a lot of top 100 teams. So at any rate, that's going to be a fun tournament. I think it's on a good time. I do like this time slot that they have for it leading up to the Final Four. But yeah, spring football. I know fans have lamented about the lack of a spring game, but as I've been saying, at least Nebraska, has open practices. They give a lot of access to the media, so even though we're not going to get to see that game, we're still going to get a lot of information. I think that's proved out to be true so far. So after looking at open practices, rumblings from reporters, all that type of stuff, what are some of your takeaways from the first week of spring ball?
Dana Holgerson is going to have this offense completely transformed to the way he wants it, and it's going to be for the better. I think when you look at this offense and you even listen to his press conference and how he talked about the offense, and then you look at the weapons that Nebraska has, it's going to be completely different than what it was last year. And, I think that's going to be really good for Dylan Raiola, who also has slimmed down a little bit. So I think the combination of those two things are really going to be positive aspects for Nebraska football. And I think, we're finally going to see a competent offense with a competent offensive scheme. And now it's going to be about who passes who on the depth chart and how the depth chart itself shakes out, because there's a lot of talent at multiple positions.
Yeah, it was interesting with Holgerson's press conference saying that, he didn't want to get back to like not the run and shoot. I'm trying to think of what he terms the
Air raid?
offense with. Yeah, the air raid. Didn't want to get back to the air raid. He said they have to run the football, they have to control the clock, that type of stuff. I thought that was interesting, but yeah, definitely going to be a different offense than it was last year. And I think the pieces that you mentioned are going to be a huge reason why. I mean, these wide receivers
Yeah.
looking dynamic. Isaiah Mosey really stepping up. I mean, he's
Yep.
been kind of a guy that's been overlooked with all the Cortez Mills buzz, Dane Keene, Isaiah Hunter. So I think Dylan Raiola called the receiver room Ferraris. He said it's filled with a bunch of Ferraris, and last year they probably had some Honda Civics, in the garage, and so
Yep.
quite a big upgrade there. But yeah, the running back room I think is one of my early takeaways. Outside of the fact that Dylan Raiola does look really good, and I think that's one of the things that should have Nebraska fans excited. Not just about the weight thing, but to me, it's the fact that he really dedicated himself this offseason to becoming a better player. He took all the steps that he needed to take physically. He's always been, a great mental student of the game. Holgerson's talked about has even added more of a leadership dynamic this season. So I think in terms of Raiola, he's done everything that you would want him to do in this offseason. And I think he's really put himself in a position to have, a breakout season in year 2. I think, he does get a lot of criticism for his freshman season, but I mean, he was in a tough spot. Not only is it hard to be a freshman quarterback, playing major college football, but he was in the pressure cooker at Nebraska, and he still got this team to a
Yeah.
bowl victory. And frankly, if some of his receivers could have caught the ball, they probably would have won 9 games last year.
Yeah.
So I really feel like the arrow for Dylan Raiola is pointing way up, and I just think that that's something that maybe isn't getting talked about enough, in like the national level of college football. Like this guy is going to be a dude, and I think everything I've seen so far this spring just reinforces that.
I don't love that he did boxing drills during the off season, but as long as nothing's broken right now, then that's okay with me. I had to laugh when he said he did boxing drills, but all joking aside, he did really dedicate himself this off season to, getting better physically, and because we know the arm talent is there, and now he's going to have, like you said, and like he said, a bunch of Ferraris and Lamborghinis to play with. So you look at some of these wide receivers and it's like, man, say what you want about maybe underachieving last season and things like that, but just the pure roster talent from where we were like 2 or 3 years ago. I remember me and you talking like, oh, Nebraska's in the depths of despair. This cupboard is bare right now, and it doesn't look good. Now we have almost too many talented wide receivers, and a lot of promising talent, unproven but promising talent in the running back room. And I thought it was really interesting how Matt Rule talked about the running back room, and he gave shout outs to, Nelson and Quentin Ives and things like that. So I think even there, they're starting to get some depth and stability.
Yeah, that was a key takeaway. I think saying that Nebraska, like the running back position, isn't somewhere that Nebraska has to add, and I think just not that we've seen a ton, but I think there is enough in that room, especially with the emergence of Jamarian Parker. Like, why waste snaps on a transfer portal guy? Like, let Jamarian Parker grow and let Quentin Ives and Mekhi Nelson, like, let them do what they do. I think there's been a lot of positive buzz about those guys so far, and like you kind of mentioned with the talent, I think Rocco Spindler mentioned that this team, he in his opinion has more talent than the team at Notre Dame that just played for the national championship. So that's kind of a bold statement. I mean, guys say things like that all the time. I think that's a tough thing to measure, but this team does have, in my opinion, the talent and the coaching staff and everything it needs to compete for a playoff spot this season. I know people think we're crazy when we say that, but I mean, just look at last year. Just look at last season. If a few plays, literally a few plays, maybe 5 or 6 plays go another way, this team is right on the cusp of the playoffs. So I don't think it's unrealistic. I know people are like sick of those kind of weighted expectations on Nebraska, but at some point this team needs to embrace that and just deal with success and find success. And I think they're on the right path to that.
Yeah, and I think also too they're starting to really go into the Florida area, the Georgia area, the down south area. We're seeing that become a major focus for recruiting, and I think that will help us get to where we want to be and get to that maybe conference championship level, or not even a conference championship anymore, but playoff level. So I think they're taking all the right steps necessary to succeed. It's just about putting the pieces together, and from what we saw over the past couple days, it looks like Nebraska has an extremely talented group of players on both sides of the football. I saw a one-on-one rep between Andrew Marshall and Cortez Mills, I think it was, and Marshall looked great, and Mills was fighting the whole way. So if that's a preview of what's to come, then I'm excited.
Yeah, Bryson Weber, I saw him making some plays as well. So yeah, I just feel like this defensive back room, that's kind of another one of my takeaways. I just feel like Nebraska is so much better at the cornerback room, just having more options, and we haven't even talked very much about like Jeremiah Charles, a 6'2" kid who also is really long and super athletic that can be a factor in this cornerback room.
Yep.
But all those guys, Amari Sanders, Marshall that you mentioned, Weber, obviously Sayer Wright, Donovan Jones. I just think that there's a lot of different guys who can actually get up and play man coverage and, just deal with the athletes. I feel like that's been a spot Nebraska's kind of struggled with, and I feel like they've recruited really well there, and they've done a really good job at wide receiver. I like I feel better about the defensive line than I thought I would going into the spring. And man, let's give a shout out to Corey Campbell. Like, holy cow, I don't think people are giving him enough credit. Like, if you want to look back at, what was part of the reason that, like, say, Michigan had a lot of success. Like, yeah, they had Harbaugh and all that, but they had an incredible strength program. They probably had the best strength and conditioning coach in the sport in college football in Ben Herbert. And that really matters in terms of your development. And it's like, man, look at Riley Van Poppel, look at Keanu Davis. These guys look like an NFL team. And Matt Rule has said that before.
Huge.
Yeah, Bryce
I saw
Turner.
him the other day. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, so I mean, that part of it, the physical development, like Nebraska's starting to look like an NFL kind of team, their defensive line, their offensive line. So I really think Corey Campbell is like one of the more underrated coaches on this staff. Matt Rule said that NFL teams were trying to poach him, and I can see why after seeing some of the results of the offseason work.
And I know some people won't want to hear this, but it really showed up in the NFL Combine measurements of, Ty Robinson and Thomas Fidone and even Isaiah Nair. Like, they performed really, really well. And I think that's a testament to Campbell's work as well.
Yeah, and talking about recruiting, like guys want to get drafted, and so the more players you get drafted, the better chance you have of getting recruited, and you're starting to win. It all adds up. So, yes, thinking about any other takeaways from this past week, I think the tight end room is going to be pretty decent. Luke Lindenmeyer, and I really like the buzz I've heard about Heinrich Harburg. I think that dude's going to be a great tight end for Nebraska. Just not necessarily someone who's going to catch have 500 yards receiving, but a true kind of blocking, receiving, like a true utility tight end. I think Harburg's going to be very successful in that role.
And I love Luke Lindenmeyer. I liked what he was able to do last year as a pure receiving tight end. Not saying that he can't block whatever, but he really, kind of shined brightly in the receiving game. And I like what he was able to do there, and I like that he's continuing to progress. And I don't know how much the tight end is going to be used in this offense when you look at the receivers and the running back room, but I do think that they still will be utilized. And so you mentioned feeling a little bit better about the defensive line. I feel a little bit better about the tight end room as well.
Yeah, especially with Dana Holgorsen saying that Carter Nelson will be, working with the tight ends whenever he comes back from injury. Hopefully that'll be this fall. Hopefully he will be able to play on the field.
Yeah, I hope they don't rush him.
Yeah, and I don't think there is a need to rush Carter at this point because for what this offense needs, I think Harburg and Lindenmeyer will be just fine. I think Harburg's going to be, not super dynamic, but I think he's going to be a dynamic, matchup for people because he's going to be tough to cover. And once he gets a little more, a little more polished with his route running and understanding the position, because he's never really played it. He's only ever just like kind of been playing quarterback and been like, oh, go play tight end some. But this year actually has a full off season to get his body in the mode of being a tight end. Because I mean, you can't play like Rule said, you can't really play quarterback at 240 pounds. It's just a different position. And so he's going to be able to put on some more weight, block, and catch. And so I'm excited about him. And another thing I'm really excited about is this linebacking core. I think this might be the best group of linebackers Nebraska's had since Bo Pelini was the head coach. I mean,
I agree.
Shavers, McGahee, Watson Trent. I'm blanking on the guy that Javin Wright. I mean, this is just a loaded group. Dason McCullough. I mean, that doesn't even talk about Christian Jones and Dawson Merritt. Like this is a loaded linebacker room, and I mean, all those guys can play. So I mean, you look at just like the 4 or 5 veterans that they have, and man, like this linebacking crew, I think is really going to stand out. So defensively, you said it last week. You think that this defense could be better. I was like a little up in the air, but now I'm really starting to believe that this defense can be better than it was last season because I think on the linebacker and the secondary, they're definitely better. It's just, can that defensive line hold up? And I think that they can.
Yeah, I feel like John Butler will be able to disguise coverages, and that will work to the skill sets of guys like McGahee and Shavers, just pure athletic players that can rush the passer, but also, drop back in coverage if they need to. So I'm very curious to see what kind of, packages he works up with them and what kind of, how he is able to generate pass, rushing pressure, because I don't think it's going to be traditionally just, edge and, defensive tackles, kind of collapse in the pocket. I do think a lot of it's going to come from, guys like McGahee and Shavers. And I do think a lot of it's going to come from the linebacker position. I mean, you talk about McCullough too. That's one thing that he's really known for in his game. So I'm very interested to see how all of these players kind of mix and match, because there is a lot of talent there and I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how that all develop. So we'll keep an eye on the spring. We'll move up to the spring, whatever the spring event, Husker Fan Day, whatever they're calling it. But that should be fun. I think we'll get more tidbits, and this week, guys, they'll start bringing on the pads more. And like I said about running backs, I feel good about it, but you kind of have to reserve judgment until the pads fully come on. That's when you find out. So I think we'll hear more rumblings, but seems like the Huskers feel good about their running back room.
A lot of visitors. I was reading a lot of reports of the visits, and they were very impressed with what they saw too. One recruit, I think it was Jamal Rule, said he liked what Emmett Johnson brought to the table and could see himself in that similar type of role. So I thought that was interesting. It's always good when you have recruits and they can see themselves fitting in the offense. So I know recruits say positive things about visits all the time, but it's certainly good to hear that.
And yeah, Jamal Rule is an interesting guy that you mentioned. His recruitment has really started to pick up in the past few weeks. Nebraska was really kind of front and center, but like Wisconsin, North Carolina State, a bunch of other programs have kind of got in the mix with offers.
He's good.
Yeah, Arkansas just offered him. So he had an official visit set with Nebraska. So it was important for him to come back for this for an unofficial visit. His other official visits are Boston College, Wisconsin, and North Carolina State right now. So he's really trending up 672 overall in the 24/7 composite rankings. So it was good to have him on campus. And then not only did they have Trae Taylor, the quarterback, but they had Torrey Pittman, another one of the top players in Nebraska, or the top player in Nebraska for the 2027 class, was on campus again. And I know that Nebraska hasn't been as focused on in-state recruiting in 2026, but they're focused on the guys they need to be focused on.
Yeah.
And you look at Pittman, man, his offer sheet, LSU. I mean, this is just in this year. LSU, Kansas State, Missouri, Miami, Iowa State. He had Penn State offer in December, USC, Tennessee. So, I mean, this is a really...
It'll be tough to keep him home, but...
Yeah, and crazy enough, I don't think people realize this. I didn't realize this until I just looked at the stats. He's in line. He's in line to be a 5-star according to 24/7 Sports. He's 12th. He's the number 12 player in the country, according to 27 Sports. In the composite rankings, he's 14th overall. So, in terms of must-land targets in the recruiting spectrum for Nebraska, he's got to be right near the top.
He's got to be right near the top, but if he gets too far away from Nebraska, I wouldn't necessarily spend a ton of time. I'm not saying not go after him, but if he appears out of reach, there's just so much other talent that I wouldn't want to miss out on either. And it's tough. I know Nebraska made the top 5 for Ryan Mosley, the wide receiver out of Georgia. So, he's a guy that I really like too. I mean, yes, we have a ton of receivers, but you can never have too many receivers, in my opinion, especially as the injuries kind of pile up during camp. But no, I mean, I thought the top 5 for Mosley was interesting because, he's a highly touted receiver as well, and we were able to make his list. So, Pittman's a guy that's really interesting. He's a highly valued prospect, and it's kind of interesting that he's a safety because, defensive players, obviously Christian Jones is an exception to this, but you usually see offensive players in the state rated very highly towards that level, but Pittman is going to be very tough to keep home. But I'm excited to see where his recruitment goes because, that'll bring more focus to the state of Nebraska in terms of, high school football and things like that. So it's good for the state.
Another player who was on campus, I think that's notable, is Nasir Rankin. And he's interesting. Nebraska was in a really good spot with him, a wide receiver recruit, and he's ranked 194th in the 24/7 composite rankings. But what's also interesting is that he has now gotten an offer from Brad Underwood in Illinois to play basketball. He is from Chicago, and the Illini do have a crystal ball prediction for him, but just a really interesting dynamic athlete in the sense that he is looking to play both sports. So that would be great for Nebraska. I feel like that offer from Illinois is maybe going to help put them over the top, but he was on campus and they've been near the top of his recruitment throughout. So that's another really interesting athlete to have on the radar in the 2026 class.
And they also offered another quarterback whose name I'm blanking on right now, but you probably...
Keegan Croucher is,
Yeah, we talked about him last week, so I'm wondering what that means for Trae Taylor. I still think we're in a good spot, but I feel like they're offering Croucher in case things with Taylor don't go as planned.
Yeah, it is kind of interesting with Keegan Croucher. His rate, he is ranked higher than Trae Taylor. He's 62nd overall in the 24/7 Sports composite rankings. It's really weird. Taylor's still not ranked by 24/7, but if you look at the On3 industry rankings, he's like 105th.
And Rivals too. I think Rivals is 4-star, if I'm not mistaken.
Rivals, I think, has him. They have him ranked really high, actually. Let me pull it up here if I can. Rivals has him ranked 11th. I mean, they have him as the 4-star, but he's 11th overall. And the number 4 quarterback for
So I
Rivals.
wonder what the difference in rankings is if he's not even ranked on one site, but the 11th overall quarterback on the other. I wonder.
No, not the 11th quarterback, the 11th
Or,
overall player. Yeah.
excuse me, the 11th overall player.
Yeah, and
I
he's
wonder.
86th from On3. So kind of interesting. He did visit Texas A&M on Sunday. So he's been taking spring visits. He's also visiting Auburn. He visited Auburn and Notre Dame, who weren't part of his top 5 or whatever. So, I mean, that kind of shows that he's gone beyond that list a little bit. He's expected to make a decision in June. He said that Taylor said he spoke with Dylan Raiola this weekend, and that conversation opened his eyes. Adam Gorney, the lead recruiting expert for Rivals, quote tweeted a Nebraska reporter and said that he felt Nebraska was in a strong position for Trae Taylor. I do think, though, it's still, I think it's smart not to put all your eggs in his basket and to offer Keegan Croucher, who, for a guy who's ranked as highly as he is, his recruitment isn't that far along. He said he wants to take another visit to Nebraska, which would be like for a game in the fall. So I think it's nice because you have Taylor's decision. If you get a commitment from Taylor, then obviously you just kind of leave, Croucher alone. You're not really going to recruit him. But if Taylor does, say go to Michigan or somewhere else, then Croucher, who is somebody who all these programs like Michigan and these other ones are recruiting, then he becomes kind of your top target. You still have a chance to get him for some visits, get him in for an official visit. So I think it's smart, and it's a good move not to have all your eggs in one basket, although I do feel that they have a pretty good chance of, bringing the egg of Trae Taylor back to Nebraska with commitment.
And you also have, TJ Lateef, Dylan Raiola for probably 2 more seasons, and then Dayton Raiola. So it's not like you're in a rush to find a quarterback in previous seasons. I mean, even I even remember last year we were kind of stressing about, or maybe it was 2 years ago, we were stressing about how they didn't find a quarterback yet and how they were struggling with quarterback recruiting. And now they're in a position where they can offer multiple quarterbacks while letting the quarterbacks on the roster develop. So they've really handled the quarterback position a lot better than even just 2 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. So it'll be interesting to see how some of those storylines develop over the next few weeks. And with Trae Taylor, if he sticks to that timeline, if he does, I would think maybe we'll see some expert picks here before too long in the next month or so. So keep an eye on that in terms of recruiting. And let's talk the Crown, man. It's the college basketball Crown. It's finally here. Nebraska's playing tonight, 7:30 Central Time. They're playing Arizona State, Fox Sports 1. I know that there's some fans aren't that excited about it, like we've kind of mentioned, but I think this is a chance for Nebraska to go win a postseason tournament, which they haven't done since 1996. Arizona State, they have lost, I think, 11 of their last 13 games or 12 out of their last 13 games. But I mean, look, the Big 12 is a tough conference.
It is,
and they're ranked in the top 75 of the KenPom rankings. That's it. There's a lot of top 100 teams in this tournament. So if Nebraska's going to win it, they're going to have to win probably 4 games against, top 100 teams. I think they have the 3rd best odds. Cincinnati is number 1. Boise State is number 2. But yeah, what do you think about tonight's game against Arizona State?
I think they have a chance to really come out strong and make an impact. I think when you look at a guy like Connor Essegian, I think he has a chance to really have a good game tonight. And when you talk about his 3-point shooting and how he can, fill up the score sheet in bunches, I think he has a chance to do that tonight. I know he's been inconsistent at times this season, but he does bring that 3-point shooting element, and not just tonight, but I feel like a good performance in this tournament overall can help him set the stage for next season and potentially a starting role.
Yeah, and you look at the Nebraska side of the bracket, Nebraska and Arizona State, they will play the winner of Georgetown and Washington State. There's also Boise State and George Washington today, and Butler and Utah. So Butler and Utah, those are 2 teams that are each ranked in the top 75 of the Ken Palm rankings. Boise State's ranked in the top 50. So is Nebraska. Nebraska's 50th in the Ken Palm rankings. So I get it's not the NCAA tournament, but I actually do like the Crown, and I think that the Crown, like by the end of this tournament, I think that it's already going to have supplanted the NIT as like the second. I think the NIT is going by the wayside after this. It'll be forever a mid-major tournament. After this rendition of the Crown, in my opinion, because I just think you have a lot of you've got 12 teams that are basically ranked in like the top 125 of the Ken Palm rankings. I know some of them have losing records, but I feel like that's also part of just like the conference setup. Like USC and Nebraska aren't terrible teams. Like if you put Nebraska in any mid-major conference, they would win it easily. I mean, they're ranked 50th in the country, so like they're better. These 16 teams are better than a lot of the teams that even played in the NCAA tournament. A lot of the mid-majors are smaller conference schools. So I'm excited about it. I hope that the team is. I think Bryce Williams and Juwan Gary were obviously really wanted to play in this thing and wanted to go win a championship. I think it would be a black eye of sorts if they went one and done and lost to Arizona State. So I think if they're there in Vegas, like let's make a run and win this championship, or at least get to the finals and get 20 wins. I think that would be a worthwhile goal for this program.
Yeah, when you look at how busy they've been contacting players in the transfer portal, I know we were worried, or I was worried that this tournament would interfere with the transfer portal, but Nebraska's also done their homework there. So, they've been busy, holding Zoom meetings and showing interest in a bunch of these guys, and I just hope that they can land a few.
Yeah, I think a lot of their work's going to have to come after this week. Price Sanford is one guy that they are still in the mix for. He's going to visit Illinois, and I think there's a return to Iowa is also, on the table. Marquel Sutton, the kid from Omaha, the Summit League Player of the Year, is also. There was talks he was going to hold a Zoom with Nebraska, so there's a couple of irons in the fire, but I think we'll see it pick up more obviously after this week is done, and they're just going to have. I think they're going to have to be smart about where they go. I mean, they're not going to outbid some of these programs for some of these top guys, but Fred's done a good job of finding really good talent. I mean, look at Bryce Williams as a great example of that. They need to try to go do something like that again. So they need a big guy, they need scoring, they need guards, they need a lot of things, but I feel like Fred will have it handled, and I have complete confidence in Fred Hoiberg. So I'm looking forward to them making a run this weekend, starting tonight. And you look at Arizona State. I mean, one thing that worries me about this matchup is they are a really good 3-point shooting team. They're third in the Big 12 in 3-point makes per game, almost 9 per game, and so we know Nebraska gives up a ton of 3-pointers. So that's kind of my one reservation about tonight's game. Arizona State turns the ball over a bunch. They're not going to have, I don't think, their full backcourt because of injuries and guys doing the portal thing or whatever, and they haven't played well. So I mean, motivation is another big factor. I feel like this tournament's a lot like a bowl game. If you're gonna, your culture and how much you really want to be there and how much it means to you is really going to matter. So hopefully it means a lot to this Nebraska team, because I really do think they could win this tournament, but they can't give up a ton of 3-pointers tonight, and Arizona State has some guys who can really shoot the heck out of it, led by Adam Miller, who used to play for Illinois. So keep an eye on him tonight.
Yeah, they got to make sure they collapse defensively and get to the shooters quickly and are quick with their rotations, because there were stretches this season where they played excellent defense, and one of the things that they really improved on was getting to the basketball quicker and getting to the shooters quicker and rotating quicker. But when they didn't do that, it was like a 3-point party for the opposition. So if they can do that tonight, then I feel good about their chances of winning. Like we've said, we know Arizona State's, not good, but they're still a decent team. And so Nebraska's going to have their work cut out for them. I don't think this would be an easy tournament by any means, but this is one last chance for everybody to kind of, band together as this Nebraska team and make some noise.
I think, it's a big weekend, especially for, like you said, Connor Esigan, Berkey, Buchentel, I think it's a big weekend for him. If he could play really well and kind of create some positive momentum, going into next season. Hell, I mean, if he plays too well, though, then he's going to get scouted by the NBA. So, I mean, let's not go crazy, but let's play just well enough to get some momentum going into next season, but not going pro. Because I do think, even though people don't want to like admit that, like a lot of basketball scouting is potential. And you look at Berkey, he's got a ton of it at 6'10, 240. I mean, he was like third on the team in 3-pointers this year. So it didn't necessarily work out quite as well as Nebraska hoped, but I do think he's still one of the, bigger upside guys on this roster. So like you look at, like if you talk to like an NBA scout about Juwan Gary or Berkey, like it's not even a debate who has a brighter like professional future. It's Berkey. He probably has a brighter future than Bryce Williams, to be honest. Like I know Bryce Williams is a great player, but he just doesn't, what's he going to do in the NBA? He's like 100 other guys, but Berkey has size and that 3-point shooting ability. So to me, like he's got the most pro potential on this team. And if he could have a good tournament and they could get him, right next year, and I think he could be an all Big Ten, contributor at some point. I really do.
And also, speaking of next year, I've heard some really good returns on Nick Janowski and Braden Frager. So, maybe they'll be able to make a bigger impact than we think next year and really step into a major role. And I was so excited when Nick Janowski committed and Frager as well. I was very happy about them both, and now it could be their chance to really step up and make an impact for the program.
Yeah, I mean, top 100 type kid in Janowski. So it's time to, realize that hype. It's disappointing that they can't play this week. There's not the same postseason rules in college basketball. So, if they played, they would burn their red shirt, which I think is dumb. But I mean, it is what it is. They would be great to have those guys. Instead, Nebraska's going to kind of have a bit of a short bench. That's going to be everybody, I think, in this tournament. So, that's going to be something to watch. Like Raleigh Wooster's going to be out. Braxton Mayo has been practicing, so I think he's going to play. But we'll see. It's going to be kind of a mix and match. But what Bryce Williams and Juwan Gary really wanted to play in this tournament, so I feel like they need to play a lot, and I feel like they're going to lead be the horses that are leading the cart, so to speak. And if Nebraska's going to win this tournament, it's going to be those two guys balling out. I know Berkey's going to have to play well and do those things, but Gary and Bryce Williams are going to have to play really well. And if they do that and to win this tournament, I think that would be a great send-off.
Absolutely. I mean, you talk about what they've done throughout their entire Nebraska basketball careers. And, Gary's been the anchor defensively. Bryce has been, in offensive spark plug. And Bryce really carried the team offensively this season. And that's not even an exaggeration. And if he can just do that for a couple more games, then Nebraska will be in good shape. It's just so fun to watch him create shots, get to the free throw line, shoot the three. He can do it all. And he's exactly the type of player that NBA teams are looking for. So I feel good about his pro future after he finishes his Nebraska career.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if he gets drafted. I think he's got a chance in the second round with his shot making ability and the size. So we'll see how that goes. So hopefully the Huskers will pull it off tonight. What's Nebraska's a 5.5-point favorite. What's your prediction?
I'm gonna say Nebraska 70 and then 63. So 70, 63 Huskers.
I'm going to say Nebraska 79 to 67. I think they're just going to be more motivated. I think Bryce Williams is going to hit some shots, and I think Arizona State, without one of their best guards, too. I just don't think they're going to be quite as motivated for this as Nebraska. So I think Nebraska will win and cover the spread and move into the quarterfinals on Wednesday. So we can talk about that on Wednesday. So that'll be exciting.
Yeah, for sure. As long as Nebraska plays good rotational defense and rotates quickly, then should be good. If they don't, it could be a problem, but we'll see.
And then, if you win on Wednesday, which, not going to be a guarantee, but then you could get that game against Boise State, which would be, a battle of two top 50 teams in the KenPom. So, I mean, I think that would be pretty exciting. I do like that the timing of it. I know people are probably, wanting basketball with the Final Four. We always have this wait up until the Final Four. So I think that the Crown was smart in their time slot. I really do think they stole the thunder away from the NIT, and we'll see how it goes. But I'm excited about it. I'm just excited to watch Juwan Gary and Bryce Williams play in Nebraska uniform as long as possible. So go Big Red. Let's get a win tonight, and we'll wrap up the show there. If you guys haven't already, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, get into the comment section, and as always, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.